Alright, so what we are going to do now is, first of all, we are going to remove all of these lines of code, all of the main section, and we are going to start from scratch. And in this exercise, we are going to write a function that simply receives nothing. It receives no parameters, alright? It receives nothing, but the function will, first of all, return something. Alright, so the function will return some value. Previously, in the first two exercises, if I'm not mistaken, we did not return anything. We just used two functions of a void type, but that's about to change right now. So the function will return something, but what the function will do, the function by itself will get from the user 3 numbers as input. All right, it will ask the user to insert 3 numbers, similarly to how we do it in the main function, but now we are going to do it inside of different function, inside of another function, which is also okay, right? There is nothing wrong about it. And this function will find the maximum value, the maximum between these 3 given numbers. Okay, numbers. And then, of course, the function is going to return the maximum that we've just found. So how should we approach this function? How should we approach and how should we solve this exercise? So first of all, we know that the function is going to return something, and that's a maximum value, and we know that this will be the maximum between given 3 numbers, and we will assume that these 3 numbers, just for conveniency, are going to be of an integer type. All right, so they are going to be an integer type, and that's why we can say that the type of the function is also going to be int. So we are specifying int as the type of the function. Now what we are going to do is specify the function name, and we will go with something like this: max between 3, let's call it like this, and the function receives nothing, so these parentheses are going to be empty, and now all that remains is simply to specify the function body. You see, guys, this case, when you do not get any parameters, is also okay. There is no necessity to always give here int num or char some character and so on. It also can remain empty. So now let's type the function, let's write down the function body. So what we should do here, how should we find the maximum between 3 numbers? We should use some conditions definitely, but we are going to start from here. We are going to get from the user 3 numbers as input. So for that, we are going, first of all, to create these numbers. So int num1, num2, and num3. And now we are going to use some guiding message. So enter num1, num2, and num3. Okay, so that's it. And now we are going to read from the console the values that the user specifies, and we are going to do it, I'm going to show you something new, we are going to do it with just one scanf function. We are going to specify %d, 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 and %d, and we are going to specify where we are going to store every value that we used by these placeholders. So the first value is going to go to num1, the second to num2, and the third one num3. Alright, so that's basically pretty much the same as you would have used 3 scanf commands in 3 lines. We can do all of these in just 1 line. And now what we should do is simply to use some conditions. So first of all, let's think about how we should solve it. We should aim to find the maximum between 3 numbers. And we've seen, if I'm not mistaken, some example like this where we had to write this inside of this int main function. It's just that right now we are going to write it inside of other function that we've called it max between 3. So the first thing we are going to do is to specify if num1 is greater than num2, which means there is a chance, if that's the case, if that happens to be true, there is a chance that num1 will be the maximum. And all that remains in such a case is to check if num1 is also greater than num3. And if that's the case, we know that num1 will be the maximum, right? Because it's greater than num2 and greater than num3. So in this case, we are going to return, right, to return num1. So if this line will be executed, we are going to step out of this function without even care what will happen afterwards. But if that's not the case, if we have here the else section, we are going to specify what? What do you think? We are going to specify return num3. Is that correct? So yes, that's definitely correct. And the reason for that is because if num2 is greater than if num1 is greater than num2, but num1 is less than num3, then definitely num3 is greater than num1, but num1 is greater than num2. So that's why we are going to return num3. But if the condition for this, if the result for this condition was false, then we are going to use here an else if, and we are going to specify if num2 is greater than num3, then in this case we are going to return num2, and also the else section, if this condition happens to also to be false, we are going to return num3. Is that clear? The logic and everything behind this functionality of finding the maximum between three values is something that you have to understand to some extent, at least at this point. And what interests us here is not the logic behind it, is actually how we formulate and how we use function that returns something, an int value, and receives nothing and reads from the user some numbers. So that's okay, and now let's go to see how we can call this function inside of the main function. And we can say that it will pretty much be very easy. Let's first of all create a max variable, because we know that this function, this max between 3, will return something. It will return something of type int. So we want to catch, to get and store what this function will return inside of some variable. And in this case, this variable is going to be max. So we can say that max equals, right? We use the assignment operator because this function returns something. And instead of the function that we use here, max between 3, right, we will receive, once it's over, once this function is complete, here will be, instead of this expression, here will be the result that the function returned, whether it will be num1, num2, or num3 value. So now let's see how this function looks like and build and run it. So enter num1, num2, and num3. Let's say that num1 will be 5, and num2 will be 7, and num3 will be 9. Now we will press enter, and basically nothing happened. So why is that? That's because the function itself did not print anything to the screen, to the console application. The function just returned some value between these two functions, right? These two functions, they talked to each other. This one, the int main, called this max between 3, and this max between 3 returned some value to main. It didn't print anything to the screen. But if we did want to print the maximum result to the screen, we should do something like this. We should do printf maximum equals to %d, and instead of this %d, we are going to specify what resides in this max variable, which is basically the result returned from max between 3 function. So we will just do something like this, max, and semicolon at the end. And let's try to build and run it once again, and we can see that, let's see, we can see that 5, 7, and 9, these were our previous examples. So 5, 7, and 9, and the maximum equals to 9, which is exactly what we expected. Let's try to run it once again with some different values. So 5, 15, and 10. So the maximum is 15, and it seems that the function is working as expected. So this is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one, where we are going to talk about another example of function usages, where we are going to return some value and the function also is going to receive some parameters, which something that didn't happen in this example. So until next time, I'll see you there.